I noticed that a small group of pupils were still struggling to grasp this concept, particularly when decimals were involved. The scaffold I used was a number slider, so that when working out a calculation, the pupils could use the scaffold to see what was actually happening to the place value of the digits when being multiplied or divided. This is the scaffold I used. While the pupils were using the slider, I asked them questions to check and deepen their understanding, such as, what's happened to the value of the numbers? Which direction are they moving in? How many places do they need to move, and how do you know? These questions help to scaffold pupils' learning by breaking down the process into smaller concepts so they could understand each step. After they'd used the slider, I asked the pupils to record the calculation in their books and then write the answer directly underneath it. Their answer was now represented in the squares on the page as well as on the slider. It was at this point I asked them to look at the squares in their maths books, and we discussed how the movement of the digits could now be represented by the squares. By transitioning from the concrete tool, the slider, to the use of the squares in the maths book, I reduced the level of scaffold given to the pupils. Using squares in the maths book made the pupils think harder about the direction the numbers should move and by how many places they should be moved, because they no longer had the concrete resource to rely on. It's important that the scaffolds like this are eventually removed entirely, as pupils need to be able to answer questions like this independently to ensure they've fully mastered the concepts and skills. After independent practice, the pupils were able to be confident in multiplying and dividing by 10, 100 and 1,000 without a concrete resource. They now use the squares in their maths books as a guide if they need to, and when doing this without squared paper, they know now they can quickly draw a grid, a bit like this one, and that will help them to move the digits. The use of a concrete tool transitions to a mental strategy that the pupils can draw upon when needed.